gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hold it, you're not that pretty. I'm a bad man. Wait. I shook up the wall. I shook up the wall.
I bear witness, there's only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his final messenger. That's what I said, Larry, on the bungle fight. Thanking you.
They call me the problem, but you could call me the can man, because anybody can get it. Africans, Americans, Dominicans, Mexicans, anybody can get it.
How y'all doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition on Split Decision. Today, we're going to be talking about Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders, the predictions. So go ahead and call in to place your position to give your prediction on this fight. There's a lot to talk about, from Floyd Mayweather and Jake Paul drama, and Andrade letting Eddie Hearn and the public know that in case Billy Joe Saunders pulls out, he's willing to replace Billy Joe Saunders. So with that being said, subscribe below, click on the notification bell, and click on that like button. It don't cost you a penny. So with that being said, let's dive in straight to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
How you doing, AKHi? Who this is and where are you calling from?
What's going on, AKHi? This is Joey from South Florida.
Joey, always the first to call in, always the first to show love, man. Pleasure having you on Split Decision as always. And first of all, how'd you like the lead up and the trash talking between Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez? Do you think the trash talking by Billy Joe Saunders is getting under Canelo Alvarez's skin?
I think so. Because this isn't any ordinary trash talk talking about how he's overrated or how he's overhyped and everything. This is talking about something personal. And the fact that Canelo Alvarez is a cheat. He's basically questioning Canelo's integrity and basically saying he don't deserve to be at the spot that he is because he needed to, take steroids in order to get there, which is a bit hypocritical, I won't lie, considering he's in no better position. But at the end of the day, this is trash talk, it's mind games, and I think at the end of the day, he did get under Canelo's skin pretty well.
I do co-sign that because Canelo Alvarez recently did an interview in which he said that he wanted to choke or kill Gennady Golovkin, something around them lines, when he accused him of cheating. When Canelo Alvarez took steroids and failed the drug test for Combuterol. So Canelo said he wanted to kill or choke Gennady Golovkin for accusing him of cheating, right? So if Billy Joe Saunders continues to bring the beef and him cheating and still accusing Canelo of cheating to this day, obviously that's, regardless what, the poker face that Canelo has is bothering him to some extent. So with that being said, I don't know if you watched the press conference today. Were you surprised the change of energy by Billy Joe? He was pressing Canelo in the media, and then when they did their first face-off, he was still pressing him. And I thought he did a brilliant job telling him, "You love that Mexican beef. You love that Mexican beef." So it seemed like he was, really getting under Canelo's skin with that. Were you surprised that he let off the gas and pressed the brakes on Canelo with this press conference today?
I mean, I think to me, he just seemed a little more serious about it. I think he just kind of took a seat from the mind games a little bit and was recognizing the fact that Canelo is a top fighter. This won't be an easy fight for him. He's a huge underdog in this fight, and he wants to recognize the fact that he's just here to win. That's what I heard him say the most in that press conference, that he wants to he's here to win. He's not here for the fame and everything that is brought with this crap. So I kind of respect it, but at the same time, like you said, I was surprised by the change of energy.
Right, right. Now, I mean, in my humble opinion, look, man, if you're going to play mind games, you're going to have to play mind games all the way. You shouldn't press a break at any time. So, I mean, Billy Joe Saunders on social media, on interviews, he been doing shot and pointing out Canelo Alvarez cheating, his history, so on and so forth. He complained about the ring, the gloves, and there's a lot of things he complained about besides Canelo Alvarez being on steroids, right? So I just found it intriguing that all of a sudden, the moment he met Canelo, at least during the press conference, like I said, he had a change of energy. If you're going to try to continue to be in someone, to pretty much get to someone's head, you're going to have to continue the insults. You can't just pause on that. So I found him, I think Billy Joe Saunders is feeling the moment. He realizing that, hey, man, it's time to focus. But at the same time, I think he should have continued with the mind games.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes, sir. My man say, why you deleted my comments? Well, if I deleted your comments, I mean, it's not me, first of all, but if you are being disrespectful, then your comment will get deleted. Second of all, your comment will automatically get deleted if you say something bad anyway, not just by me, just by the algorithm on YouTube. So just to let you guys know, be respectful. Everybody is welcome here as long as you're being respectful. So with that being said, what's your prediction on the fight? Who are you picking to win and why?
I'm picking Canelo to win because at the end of the day, even though I think that personally this will be a much harder fight for him than the likes of a Callum Smith, I think Canelo has enough to at least adapt to Billy Joe and ultimately pull off the victory. However, at the same time, I am intrigued to see how he's going to handle Billy Joe's style, considering Billy Joe is all about movement and getting and kind of moving away from fighters, and Canelo doesn't really do well against those fighters.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now,
so
right. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
and when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, he struggled with movers, but I just think Billy Joe, whenever he faces someone with coordination, with head movement, he really doesn't move as much as when he fights, obviously a flat-footed fighter like Lemieux. When he fought Lemieux, he showed his footwork, he showed his head movement, and the angles, so on and so forth. And then on his recent couple fights, you didn't see much of his footwork against those guys because they were more mobile. They had more rhythm than a Lemieux, for example. And that's what Canelo brings to the table. He brings a lot of head movement. He brings speed, power, IQ. So I don't see, Billy Joe Saunders moving a whole lot, because if he does, he's going to be moving without a purpose. The times I have seen Billy Joe fight fighters with rhythm, he usually moves without a purpose. But he obviously does have good footwork, and that gave Canelo Alvarez trouble in the past. I didn't see Amir Khan outboxing Canelo for like 4 or 5 rounds, and he did. So Billy Joe definitely have a chance of outboxing Canelo, but the $1 million question, can he really get the decision? So even if he does, he's going to have to knock out Canelo to win anyway. And then you have to factor in supposedly Canelo eating contaminated meat. So like Billy Joe Saunders' father said, he liked that beef really juicy. That means Canelo is not going to gas out during the fight. Remember, when Canelo fought Austin Trout, he gassed out toward the later portion of that fight. When there's a lot of fights when Canelo, even Angulo was a sitting duck for all the punches he was throwing. He was hitting him with all type of combinations, and Canelo eventually gassed out toward the later portion of the fight, so he had to be selective with his punches. Against Trout, if you look at the later portion of that fight, you will notice Canelo throw 2 punches around and land 2 punches around toward the later portion of the fight. If you may wonder why that is, it's not because he didn't want to take risks. For the people that may wonder, because since he was already up, according to the open scoring in Texas, that wasn't the case because Austin Trout wasn't a power puncher. So it's not like he had to play it safe. What it was is that Canelo, he gassed out, and he showed that he had a pattern of gassing out against Gennady Golovkin and many fighters. But if you are eating contaminated meat, if you are getting that, obviously the WBC increased the combuterol limit, in which Billy Joe Saunders pointed out to the public, and Canelo clarified that the WBC have increased the combuterol limit, so he's free to eat contaminated meat all he wants legally. So with that being said, that will give him the benefit of not gassing out toward the later portion of that fight, which most likely gives him the edge in a Billy Joe Saunders fight. Now, obviously, I already made it known that you don't really have to be that special to beat a Canelo Alvarez, but so Billy Joe Saunders could most likely do it. However, like I said, he has a lot of obstacles to overcome, such as and just not just obstacles. The fact that he's, in my mind, already mentally defeated with the really demanding the 22 to 24 foot ring. I promise you, Benavidez wouldn't complain about a 22 to 24 ring. Andrade wouldn't complain about a 24 to 24 ring. Troller wouldn't complain about the size of the ring. All they care about is getting the fight. So the fact that Billy Joe Saunders is demanding a big ring lets you know he's limited. And Canelo noticed that. So with that being said, I just think that, obviously it's funny to me, and it's ironic that Billy Joe Saunders is accusing Canelo of being on steroids when Billy Joe Saunders himself got tested positive for steroids that leave your body in 24 hours when he was facing Andrade. So it's like a cheater accusing another cheater of cheating and then getting co-signed and backed up by another cheater, which is Fury. So it's like it's a whole lot of cheating going on and a whole lot of exposing going on. And at the end of the day, if Billy Joe Saunders knew Canelo is eating contaminated meat, well, he could have ate contaminated meat himself to even out the playing field. You'll be stupid to know Canelo is eating contaminated meat and you yourself don't eat contaminated meat. Whatever Canelo do, you do. Since the WBC increased the combuterol limit, you eat contaminated meat as well. And the WBC can't say, oh, well, you're not allowed to eat contaminated meat because there isn't contaminated meat where you at. At the end of the day, Billy Joe could do what Fury did, and blame it on a wild boar that was contaminated and claim that he ate a contaminated wild boar. So, like I said, I mean, this whole saga have been interesting. So I will see how the fight play out, but I think Canelo Alvarez will break down Billy Joe Saunders with his body shots and his straight right hands. I did watch Billy Joe Saunders' couple fights, some of his last couple fights, and I noticed Billy Joe Saunders being really vulnerable to the body when he's stationary and very vulnerable in the inside to uppercuts and right hands. In fact, a couple fights ago, Billy Joe Saunders were hurt. He was extremely hurt. I'm talking about wobbled by a right hand. So I seen him also look horrible and be down on the scorecard when he fought on Logan versus KSI undercard. So again, I think the blueprint for Canelo to win is there, and I will put my money on Canelo, but it will be a good fight nevertheless. So let me read the super chat. Doggy Pup, I appreciate the love and support, my brother. So that being said, I do want to touch on this topic real quick and get your thoughts on it. There have been a lot of complaints by Billy Joe Saunders' behalf on the ring. What's your take on that? Do you co-sign Billy Joe? Do you stand next to Canelo with this ring issue? What's your take on that?
Look, the way I see it is, if you agree to something prior to it happening, if you sign a contract, or even if you have even if you agree to even a simple handshake, co-sign. We did this months prior. Now on the day before or the week of you want to change things. No, I don't agree with you doing that. I'm on Billy Joe Saunders' side. People trying to make it seem as, oh, he's scared. He's trying to make excuses. People don't get it. When you're trying to fight Canelo, you need every advantage you get because Canelo has every advantage. I'm not talking about just Canelo's boxing skills. I'm talking about beating Canelo on the scorecard is damn near impossible. Floyd Mayweather happened to even get a draw on one of the scorecards when he beat the crap out of Canelo. So that tells you, you don't just need to be good to beat Canelo on the scorecard. You need to be one of the greatest of all time. That's not an understatement. So that kind of tells you. So when Billy Joe Saunders is saying, no, I don't want to do that. I mean, let's make this very clear. Billy Joe Saunders is not the first person to do this. If I recall, Tyson Fury tried to do this with Vladimir Klitschko, with the whole, with how he said it felt too rubbery, the ring, and they got rid of it and everything, and then the fight took place. Now, mind you, Tyson Fury, as we all know, was on steroids, and I doubt the floor was the reason why he won, but he was willing to take any advantage he could in order to beat Vladimir Klitschko. I don't judge Billy Joe Saunders for trying to do the same.
Exactly.
Especially when they agree to it prior to the fight.
And that's how
you stick to your word as a man. That's how it is.
Yeah, that's the code. You know, if you agree to something prior, you live up to it. And yeah, for Canelo to switch the ring last minute, I just wonder how many people he did that to. Because last time I checked, you know, that ring looked really small against Lara. I remember Lara walking from corner to corner, and he ends up being on the edge. You know, it's like the ring looked really small to me. So how many people Canelo have he did this to? So again, you need every single advantage. And obviously, Billy Joe Saunders, he trained most likely in a 24x24 size ring. You know, whatever the agreement was, that's obviously the size of the ring he trained in. So if you're going to train in a large ring, and then fight night, they give you an Olympic style ring, you're obviously going to complain because of the obvious reason you trained in a professional size ring, not an Olympic style ring. This is not amateur fighting. This is pro fighting. So I have to side. I do have to side with Billy Joe Saunders with that. Now, they did come to a mutual agreement to fight in a 22x22 size ring. Now, I do want to bring this to your attention, which is Billy Joe Saunders, Eddie Hearn said there's no truth to agreeing prior to the fight to a 24x24 size ring. He said Billy Joe Saunders complained and he wanted a 22x22 size ring. And then when he talked to Canelo, Canelo said no problem. And he granted Billy Joe Saunders his wishes. So Billy Joe Saunders responded to that by saying that Eddie Hearn is a sellout. He kissing Canelo ass to pretty much be able to have, not just be able to have good relationship with him, to work with him in the future. So before I get your thoughts on what Eddie had to say, my humble opinion on what Eddie said, if Eddie did tell Canelo Billy Joe Saunders wanted a 22x22 size ring, and Canelo said no problem right away, then why was this issue long? Why did this issue take so long? I mean, we heard it in the media. We heard Billy Joe pulling out. We heard Ryder flying to the U.S. to replace Billy Joe in case he pulls out. This didn't just resolve over one day, one night. This took place for like around a few days, almost a week. So Eddie Hearn, he made it seem like as soon as he told Canelo the issue, Canelo said, no problem, we give him what he wanted. So if that was the case, how come this took such a long time to resolve?
I mean, I don't even see it like that. The real question is not even about the length of it. It's more about if all Billy Joe Saunders, if all he did was just ask and Canelo agreed, then why did you have a backup fighter just in case? If that's the case, if it should be no problem, then there shouldn't be the need of calling John Ryder. We shouldn't hear Billy Joe on the verge of pulling out. That sounds like there's a dispute, and Canelo, at least at one point, either wasn't willing to or didn't see the need to make the ring a regular size. I mean, at the end of the day, I do think that Eddie Hearn is just trying to play devil's advocate, but what he doesn't realize is that he hasn't really been playing devil's advocate. He's kind of been leaning towards Canelo very recently because of how Billy Joe Saunders keeps having to keep agreeing to Canelo's terms in terms of the judges and the ring size. It doesn't feel as if Billy Joe is kind of getting his fair share. And like I just mentioned, if this was so easy, none of this would have had to have taken place to begin with.
Right.
If it's so simple, then this shouldn't have been an issue to be reported.
Exactly.
Like, this would have been simple. Like, this why was this such a big deal? Why were there circuits saying that the fight between Canelo and Billy Joe was off? The saying, if it was so simple, then why did we go into panic mode about this fight?
That's a great point, and that's definitely a diva move by Canelo. You know, if he, tells the public one thing and then behind closed doors he does another. So, like you said, that's a great point. Why call Ryder to come replace Billy Joe Saunders in case he pulls out last minute? And why not call Demetrius Andrade, who's a champion in the United States? You don't have to fly somebody all the way from Europe. I mean, I know Canelo is the European assassin, but I mean, come on now. We have 70,000 fans, and we need a better opponent than Ryder at this moment in time if Saunders does pull out. I mean, I think it's fair to say the fans deserve a better opponent than a Ryder, especially on a few days' notice. And then you have to fly him out from all the way from Europe. And people wonder why we say Canelo is the king of Europe. He's the pound for pound #1 in Europe because he always want to fight European fighters. He's talking to the best European promoter, and then he's always fighting European fighters. That's why he's officially known as the European assassin. You have Demetrius Andrade. He made it publicly known. He said, Canelo Alvarez, I'm willing to replace Billy Joe Saunders if he does pull out. And he called both of them the B word. Benavidez Sr. told me on my show, if Billy Joe Saunders pulls out, they willing to replace him in 24-hour notice. So you have Benavidez and you also have Andrade. So you will think, I mean, for the people that say, I just want to make it clear for the people that say, oh, you got to understand, AKHi, at the end of the day, Matchroom has to work with their fighters. Well, last time I checked, Andrade is a Matchroom fighter.
Andrade.
Exactly. So if that was the case, wouldn't you want to replace Saunders with the same style opponent as like an Andrade, for example, who's a southpaw, who also happened to be another champion, who also happened to be the WBO 160 champion, undefeated, and never took steroids. If you want to make Billy Joe Saunders really look stupid for accusing you of being on steroids to this day, how about fight the man that Billy Joe Saunders refused to fight unless he was on steroids, and he was stripped of his belt for being on steroids against, and that's Demetrius Andrade. So, and I mean, if Demetrius Andrade can get a fight with Canelo Alvarez on a 24-hour notice and be the backup plan, he will never get a fight with Canelo Alvarez on a full camp, if that's the case. So, I mean, again, like I said, I've seen a lot of comments. I dropped a video on that, and a lot of comments, a lot of people were telling me, yo, AKHi, you got to understand, Canelo can't replace Billy Joe with such a big name last minute. It's too risky for Canelo. It's too risky for supposedly pound for pound. How is it risky when Canelo had a full camp and these guys are taking a fight on a 24-hour notice? Are you serious? Man, Masvidal fought Usman on a week notice. That's some gangster shit. Now, Canelo Alvarez can't fight. Yeah, Canelo can't fight Billy Joe. Canelo can't fight Andrade or Benavidez on a 24-hour notice. That's absolutely ridiculous, especially if y'all claiming he the best in the world. But he obviously the best cherry picker in the world.
No, that's not even. I'll do you one better. Funny how you guys say, oh, he can't pick an elite fighter late notice like that, and yet Canelo loves to point out the fact that Demetrius Andrade doesn't deserve a fight. So if Demetrius Andrade don't deserve a fight, that must mean he's not elite. So he should be the first option. What makes him any less elite than a John Ryder who's coming off of a loss right now?
Exactly, and more importantly, Andrade, he's a two-time world champion, just like Billy Joe. if you're gonna say Andrade ain't fought nobody, like Canelo said, well, Billy Joe ain't fought nobody. If you're gonna say Canelo is boring, well, he's more exciting than Billy Joe. I mean, at the end of the day, Andrade was the clean fighter that Billy Joe tested positive for steroids against. But I guess Canelo prefers to fight another fighter that he could relate to. And what I mean by that cheated in the past, so they could have something in common. Is that what it is? I mean, like I said, they don't call him the European assassin for nothing. But with that being said, do you have, you know, a topic in mind that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Sean Porter's recent statement about how he said that Canelo Alvarez is the greatest fighter of this era and the unquestionable pound-for-pound fighter. I wanted to see how you, what did you think about that?
And then just to make it clear, he said the best fighter of this era?
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, well, look, I'm gonna read the super chat in a few. But now help me understand, what is an era?
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a pretty long period of time.
That's a long period of time.
Pretty premature.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So okay. Well, are we talking about a long time?
2 years, I guess, for Canelo.
How many years?
Like I guess an era now has dropped to maybe 1 or 2 years if you're talking about Canelo, but if we're talking about an era,
right,
I would say about 10, 15, maybe 20 years.
Exactly, 20 years, a whole career. Like when you talk about an era, it's like a whole career, right? So if we're going to talk about a whole career, are we talking about like, what are we talking about? To the future? 10 years, 20 years to the future? Or are we talking about 20 years to the past? So when Sean Porter says Canelo Alvarez is the best fighter of this era, I agree with him. I think Canelo Alvarez is the best cherry picker of this era. He's the best European assassin of this era. He's the best fighter against Europeans of this era, if you want to call him that. But it's really premature to call a guy like Canelo the best fighter of this era. When, if we're talking about the future, that's absolutely ridiculous, because you got to include fighters like Shakur, and we know what he's capable of. So if we're talking about a prediction, that's nothing factual. And if we're talking about what he already did, like the best fighter of this era, Canelo started his pro career in 2005. That's 16 years ago. Floyd Mayweather was active in his prime at the time, and Manny Pacquiao was terrorizing divisions at the time. Manny Pacquiao is still fighting to this day. So when you say Canelo is the best fighter of this era, you some way, somehow placing him above Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Money Mayweather, which is absolutely laughable, if you ask me, because we know Floyd Mayweather mopped the floor with Canelo when Floyd Mayweather was a grandpa, when he was an old man, and Canelo was entering his prime. He was already in his prime. And I already made it clear on that. I already made it clear on a video talking with you, which I'm going to leave it in the comment section below, because like I said before, Mike Tyson was undisputed at 21 years old, the baddest man on the planet at 21. But Canelo's not ready at 23. Floyd Mayweather was the best version of himself at 23. So Floyd Mayweather at his worst beat Canelo entering his best, or at his best. So it's really, I mean, for Sean to make a comment like that, it's absolutely ridiculous to say Canelo is the best fighter of this era, ignoring Andre Ward, ignoring Floyd Money Mayweather, ignoring Manny Pacquiao. All these fighters mop the floor with Canelo Alvarez when it comes to their resume, when it comes to their dominance, when it comes to them fighting the best, coming off their biggest wins, when it comes to more accomplishments, you name it. Canelo doesn't even compare. He's not even on the same pedestal as a Floyd, Manny Pacquiao, or even an Andre Ward. So for Sean Porter to say that, knowing that his best friend, Demetrius Andrade, have been avoided by Canelo for the past 7 years, to this day. Canelo Alvarez was Andrade mandatory at one point. Canelo didn't have a belt. He was Andrade mandatory. he refused to fight the champion, Andrade, when Andrade called him the B word. But some way, somehow, this same guy, Canelo Alvarez, who fights fighters coming off their worst performances, fights Avini for Benavidez belt, who's coming off a loss and 2-year layoff. He's some way, somehow the best. The best against Europeans, because last time I checked, he ain't fighting no undefeated Black American fighters. And the last time he fought one was 9 years ago when he lost to Floyd Money Mayweather. He avoids that style to this day. Last time I checked, Canelo Alvarez, he doesn't fight undefeated Mexican fighters either. And the reason why, he said he don't want to fight his people. See, when Benavidez, undefeated Mexican, when a guy that could fight his ass off, when we talk about him, Canelo, he don't like to fight Mexicans anymore. But when it's Chavez, the same size as Benavidez, just a poor version of his father, Canelo, he entertains that fight all day, every day. He fights Lopez, a guy 2 weight divisions smaller than him. He fights Angulo. But this guy, you telling me, is the best fighter of this era when he's not even the #1 pound for pound today, because Terence Crawford is undisputed #1 pound for pound, without a question. In fact, Sean Porter, as Terence Crawford mandatory, avoided him. So this is what Sean Porter doing, in my opinion. I think Sean Porter is trying to take attention away from himself for avoiding the #1 pound for pound, Terence Crawford, because I dropped a video on that, which I'm going to leave in the comment section below. Sean Porter, ever since he lost to Errol Spence, he's been screaming out, Terence Crawford, Terence Crawford, Terence Crawford. And, you know, the fact that he keeps mentioning Terence Crawford, ever since he lost to Errol Spence, Crawford responded by saying, listen, you never mentioned my name when you had a title. When you lose your title and now you're coming off a loss, now you want the fight? Okay. We'll see. He said, we'll see. The moment Sean Porter became Crawford mandatory, his team told Sean Porter, go ahead, activate your mandatory. Petition to fight the champion. Don't do what Danny Garcia did and wait your mandatory out and have someone else replace you. Petition to fight the champion. They told Sean Porter that. And Sean Porter didn't move. He said he wanted to listen to his team. He kept talking. He said he gonna knock out Terence Crawford, but he didn't follow it up with action. So Sean Porter, he want to call Canelo the best in the world while avoiding the real #1 pound for pound, the best in the world, Terence Crawford. That's what I'm seeing at the moment in time. I just see a whole lot of deflection going on, because see, Errol Spence did the same thing with Terence Crawford. Errol Spence, he said Canelo's #1, because if he told the truth and said Terence Crawford is #1, now all pressure will be on Errol Spence to fight Terence Crawford, because everyone will tell Errol Spence, if you think Crawford is #1 pound for pound, why don't you fight him next? Why are you saving him for last? We don't care about the other side of the street. We don't care about the split, because obviously Errol Spence never brought up the purse splits when he called out Canelo. Errol Spence never brought purse splits when he talked about Keith Thurman in the past, but he brought up purse splits when he talking about Crawford, because they all know who the real smoke is. They know how good Terence Crawford is. So what I'm saying is, essentially, is you see Sean Porter claim Canelo the best. You see Errol Spence claiming Canelo the best, because they know if they say it's Terence Crawford, a fighter in their division that's undisputed pound for pound #1, then the pressure will be on them to fight Terence Crawford ASAP. And they don't want that type of pressure on them. And then they obviously want to cater in to the decafs. And mainly Sean Porter at the moment in time, he want to cater in to the Canelo fans to be accepted. But at the end of the day, I will always tell the truth before I sell out, especially with someone with Sean Porter caliber, with his credibility. But again, like I said, at the end of the day, it's obvious it's a biased opinion, and it's a fact that Canelo is not the best fighter of this era, because Floyd Mayweather whooped him and mopped the floor with him. Canelo is Floyd Mayweather's easiest fight, and Pacquiao is a better fighter than Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is a better fighter than Canelo, and even Andre Ward. So what are we even talking about? Canelo, he's still ducking Demetrius Andrade, Sean Porter, best friend, and Charlo to this day for the past 7 years, including David Benavidez. So again, like I said, I just think he's catering to you know, the casual fans more so to the Canelo fans to be accepted. But I just think that's the wrong move to make. What's your take on that?
I mean, yeah, it's just the thing is, I was a little shocked to hear Sean Porter say this, considering the fact that for the longest time, I would imagine that he would have given the props to Terrence Crawford. But like you said, that would have just put pressure on him. So he's most likely doing this probably to just get the attention and heat off him, because I know there's a lot of heat on him since his recent comments about the mandatory and everything like that. So I don't know if his feelings are genuine. I don't imagine that they are, considering his actions towards Terrence Crawford, how he hasn't really been interested in fighting Terrence Crawford. Like, contrary to what he says, how he wants to fight him, his actions are saying the complete opposite. And the way he avoided explaining himself regarding his mandatories also just furthered that. Yeah. So you already know, man, with Sean Porter, as much as I had respect for him in the past, and even still now to an extent, this kind of it just doesn't look good on him. And with Errol Spence, well, Errol Spence, I don't even want to get into that, to be honest, because if I get into Errol Spence, I'm just gonna remind myself of how when he was asked about fighting Terrence Crawford this year, he talked about it briefly and then just deflected to talking about a potential fight with Canelo Alvarez, who was 3 weight classes above him. So, yeah. I mean,
and just like I said, you know, when he mentioned Canelo, he didn't say, if it ain't 50-50, I ain't fighting Canelo. And remember, that's he moving up 2 divisions. So that's like a hell of a disadvantage. You better ask for 50-50. But again, when you really want the fight, you're not going to try to negotiate publicly and ask for 50-50, so on and so forth. You only make a crazy demand when you don't want the fight. So again, like I said, I do have a lot of respect for Sean Porter as a fighter, but I lost a whole lot of respect for Sean Porter with what he did with Crawford, the stunt he pulled, because it looked like a whole lot of clout, and then turn around and just try to cater in to the you know, to the decafs and making a statement that's just absolutely false. And that's a fact. The truth is, Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao are the best fighters of this era. Manny Pacquiao is still active till this day. And then when he talks about Manny Pacquiao, he says Manny Pacquiao is the best fighter. And then when he talks about Canelo, he says Canelo is the best fighter. Now, which one is it? You can't have it both ways. So it just lets you know, he just, like I said, in my humble opinion, I just think he's trying to take attention away from himself with the stunt he pulled against Crawford. But again, you know, I will never, like I said, you should always tell the truth before selling out or, you know, catering to the fans, because again, it's a fact that Floyd is better than Canelo, because Floyd beat Canelo. Canelo is Floyd's easiest fight. Floyd got better resume, so on and so forth. Manny Pacquiao and Andre Ward. So that's a false statement. It's mind-blowing to hear from a guy like Sean Porter. And that comment alone lost some more respect point in my book. So I got a question for you. This man said, can you name 3 things Canelo is doing right? And that's the problem. When you can't name 3 things off the dome that Canelo is doing right, that's the problem. Because he's destroying the sport, cherry picking. Can you name 3 things that Canelo is doing right? Because I'm having a hard time doing that. You could have said, name 3 things. Hold on. If he would have said, it would have been easier if he would have said, name 3 things that Canelo is doing wrong. I could have easily said, oh my God, eating contaminated meat, cherry picking, avoiding Charlo, Benavidez, Andrade. I could have gave you a whole book, which is the book of excuses by Canelo Alvarez. Canelo is the pioneer of the NBF belt, the witness protection franchise. So, I mean, I could have gave you a whole list. So can you name 3 things for this fella that Canelo is doing right?
Naming 3? Damn, that's a lot. You asking for a lot here, man. I can maybe give you one, and that's like a decent thing, and like that's fighting Billy Joe Saunders. But then again, what's the bad thing he did? The bad thing is that he almost made that fight not happen with his unwillingness to give just the simple things like a regular ring size. So the thing is with Canelo, if there's a potential good thing, there's a bad thing that comes along with it. Like, yeah, I could say Canelo fought Triple G, but I could also say Canelo tested positive for steroids. I could say Canelo fought Floyd Mayweather, but because Canelo fought him at a quote unquote young age, he got excuses given to him for fighting Floyd at a young age. So that's the problem with Canelo.
And dominated.
If you say he did something good,
yeah,
huh?
And he got dominated. And he got dominated. He didn't even make the fight competitive, close, and he was entering his prime at his bullyweight division.
Exactly. And the thing is, like Floyd Mayweather, I recently saw this today. He was asked about Canelo's comments recently about when Canelo said he would knock out Floyd Mayweather in his prime. That Floyd Mayweather made, it was a good jab at Canelo. He's like, well, first off, I like to point out the fact that when I beat Canelo, I didn't fight him in my prime. So before Canelo can even say, fight me in my prime, I beat him out of my prime. So, and Canelo was coming into his prime. Floyd Mayweather stated this. And I'm thinking, I didn't even think about that. Before Canelo can even say he would beat Floyd Mayweather in his prime, can you even beat the Floyd Mayweather that fought you out of his prime? Can you even do that, Canelo? Because you sure as shit can't.
Right, right. And it's crazy because remember, me and you talked about it. Floyd Mayweather responded to Canelo Alvarez comment of beating him or knocking him out in his prime. And he said, I already beat him in his prime. I was an old man. And I beat him in his prime. Like I said, Mike Tyson was the undisputed champion of the world at 21, the baddest man on the planet. Floyd Mayweather was Floyd was at his best at 23. But Canelo, who said, I was born ready. He's not ready at 23 when he had 9 years experience as a pro, and he was at his bully weight division, his natural weight division, and the list goes on and on of the advantages Canelo Alvarez had from, like I said, he had 40 plus fights, but he's not ready. You will never be ready if you have 40 plus fights and you're still not ready. Floyd is simply the better fighter. So, like I said, when you're having a hard time naming few things, it just lets you know, that Canelo, he's doing a whole lot of wrong things. He's not moving like a real champion. A real champion will never give up his belt. That's being called a fake champion. If you have to give your belt up to a fighter, you will be labeled as a fake champion. Only a real champion. A real champion will fight his mandatory. But see, Canelo, he will fight an Ivini Yildirim when he's his mandatory. But when it's a Charlo, you can have my belt, right? When Canelo is the #1 mandatory for Andrade belt, he refuses to fight Andrade. And when Andrade vacates his belt, he's willing to fight Smith.
Liam Smith.
You know what I'm saying? Like, hold on. I never heard of Smith, but I heard of Andrade. He's an Olympian, so on and so forth. He's a 2-time world champion, but Canelo refuses to fight that guy. However, he fights Smith in a heartbeat. Canelo fights the Smith family, but he won't fight in Texas. He will fight the Smith family in Texas, but he won't fight none of the Charlo twins. That's from Texas, undefeated, making history as twins. So again, it just shows you that Canelo Alvarez is the cherry picker of the century, if anything. So with that being said,
the thing is, it's just that when people try to talk about Canelo's resume, because everybody loves to go to this comment. Everybody loves to talk about, Canelo's resume. That's why he's talking about #1. I want to ask you guys, you Canelo fans, like man to man, did you guys even know half the fighters Canelo faced before Canelo fought them? Did you know who Liam Smith was before Canelo? Did you know who Rocky Fieldings was before Canelo? Did you know who Ivini Yildirim was before Canelo? Like, even Callum Smith, yeah, don't get me wrong, he's an undefeated champion. I'll give him that. But you didn't know about these guys. But when it comes to Mayweather and Pacquiao, I knew who Cotto was. I knew who Maidana was. I knew who Broner was. I knew who Timothy Bradley was. Marquez. Even Canelo himself, when Floyd Mayweather beat his ass. I know all these guys because they were good fighters prior to fighting them.
Even
That's
Ortiz.
the thing about it.
Even Ortiz, remember?
Even Ortiz
beat an undefeated Berto. We knew who he was when Floyd fought him.
Like, the list goes on about the fighters who Floyd fought. Floyd's worst opponents are better known or even better fighters than Canelo's best opponents. Let's be honest here. The two fighters, maybe three, the 2 to 3 fighters that Canelo is going to be known for, because nobody remembers the Callum Smith fight. Nobody remembers the Liam Smith fight. Nobody remembers these fights. That's the thing about it. They talk about Canelo's resume, but they're forgettable fights. But everybody remembers Mayweather's fight with Miguel Cotto. Everybody remembers Mayweather's fight with Shane Mosley. Everybody remembers Mayweather's fight with De La Hoya because these were legendary fights. And Pacquiao's. They remember these fights because they made history. They were huge fights. Even when people like to talk about, Canelo fought Sergey Kovalev. Yeah, Sergey Kovalev, who almost got knocked out by Anthony Yarde. The one who faced the true version of Kovalev, the crusher, that was Andre Ward. So when we talk about the best fighters, we talk about Ward, Pacquiao, Mayweather. That's what we talk about in terms of era, not Canelo. Because Canelo's going to fight every fighter you mentioned when they're almost 40 years old, they got injuries, or when they're coming off losses. That's Canelo Alvarez for you. You don't want to fight them at their peak. Because he'll say how Demetrius Andrade don't have the resume, but he'll fight a Liam Smith who you've never heard of.
Yeah.
Just think about that.
And Canelo will never fight a Kovalev in his prime, the way Andre Ward moved up and fought him after Gennady Golovkin avoided him. He not cut from the same cloth as these legendary fighters you mentioned. And I agree with you, man. At the end of the day, the good thing we could say about Canelo is at least he's fighting Billy Joe Saunders. I mean, like I said before, when Canelo is not fighting an Ivini, when he's not fighting a Rocky Fielding, it's a celebration because the bar is held so low for Canelo to reach that even a midget could reach this bar because of the obvious double standards that's given to the favoritism, I should say, that's given to Canelo Alvarez when it comes to cherry picking and being allowed to. They tell him scream out and NBF, don't fight any undefeated black fighters that have the style to beat you like Floyd did, the likes of Charlo and Andrade, and we're going to still call you the best, Canelo. Just cherry pick. Just make sure you don't lose. So when he fights and Billy Joe, who tested positive for steroids, who ducked Andrade and all these fighters, I mean, it's still a celebration because he's a decent opponent. He's an average opponent. I mean, anything better than Ivini, right? I mean, so
yeah, pretty much.
So, like I said,
it's like, yeah. I'm like, it's sad when I'm excited for Canelo versus Saunders. Like, this should be a fight where I should be like, oh, okay. This should be the equivalent of Mayweather versus Guerrero. Like, that's the only fight I can say when Mayweather fought him. It was a decent fight. But even Guerrero wasn't a bad fight or a bad fighter. But you're going to tell me the best fight you have had in years is a Billy Joe Saunders, who, like you said, tested positive for steroids, who doesn't have the most exciting style, and yet you'll fight him before Demetrius Andrade, who's been calling you out since 154. Come on, Canelo. Like, you telling me this is the best you can do when you got the likes of Charlo, Benavidez, Andrade been calling you out?
Exactly. Yes, sir. But
we got to deal with the best we can.
Yes, sir. we know what time it is. But with that being said, hey, stay on the line. I'll let you know if I could get back with you because there's one more topic I want to talk about. But I do want to pick up a few calls because I have a lot on the line.
All right, man. Take it easy. Good talking to you, AKHi.
Yes, sir. I'm holler at you in a little bit if I could get to you. All right.
Man.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Go ahead, pick up. Oh my God, right here. How you doing, AKHi? Who this is? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is David, and I'm calling from Oakland, California.
Yes, sir. Talk to me. So, who are you picking? Canelo versus Billy Joe? Who you favor in that fight and why?
Well, as much as I dislike Canelo, I'm willing to go with Canelo just because of the excuses Billy Joe Saunders has been putting, and even though Canelo hasn't fought any elite fighters, I'm still willing to put my money on Canelo because like he's willing. He cuts off the ring well. He punches hard. He has the power. Has the discipline. And yeah, I would just go with Canelo.
How you feel about Billy Joe Saunders accusing Canelo of cheating, being on steroid to this day, while he himself cheated too against Andrade, and he took steroids, which is pretty ironic. So, what's your thoughts on that?
It's crazy, man. It's just cheater with cheater accusing of cheating. It's all cheating. It's crazy.
Man.
And no, I just I don't see I don't respect that. I don't respect cheating at all.
Well, you know, the WBC, for the people that don't know, the WBC, supposedly, I have heard that they are awarding the winner a new belt for this fight. So I don't know what is this belt supposed to be, the computer roll belt, the steroid belt?
That.
Yeah, is this the best cheater award? Who's the best cheater in the world? Like, what is this belt for? Like, what is this belt for? We got too many belts already. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I heard that they was adding a belt. I'm not so sure. I haven't really looked at it, but yeah, I heard that they was adding a belt, another one when there's already way too many.
Yes, sir. So if you have to put your money, you got it on Canelo. Now, are you picking a knockout or are you picking a decision? And what round if you are picking a knockout?
Man, I don't think it's gonna be by KO. I still think Billy Joe Saunders is still a decent fight. I think he'll go the distance probably. But I'd say Canelo by decision, but maybe by stoppage in the later rounds like 9, 10. But I think most likely by decision, probably, yeah.
Yes, sir. And who this is again?
This is David.
David, though. Well, David, you got a decision by Canelo. I'm going live after the fight on Saturday, so we'll call in if you still up to if you do get your prediction right or wrong. We want the people to call back that plays their prediction. So, anything else you want to say when it comes to the fight or anything in general?
Yeah, actually, I was just really pissed off at this. What's it called? I saw an interview with Brian Custer and with Canelo Alvarez, and he was talking about he asked Canelo Alvarez, "Would you be willing to fight any Mexican fighters?" And he was like, "No, I'm not willing to fight any Mexican fighters." He repeated what he said, and he was like, "Because I represent Mexico." How do you represent Mexico? Mexican people like myself do not compare with Canelo. They do not. I've tried, and I've never backed down from any fight I've had in my life. Yeah, like David Benavidez. David Benavidez is a real Mexican fighter. Is a real dog. Like he yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite fighter, and I think he's the boogeyman at 168, man.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like David Benavidez, for example, right? He couldn't get a fight with Caleb Plant. He couldn't get a fight with no champion at 168. He tried to fight everybody. He couldn't get a fight. That's why they call him the boogeyman, right? So Canelo moved up to the division. Now he getting all these fights. He miscalculated his weight. He lost the belt on the scale. Next day, Canelo knocks the door on Sulaiman door, requesting to fight David Benavidez. Now, the crazy part is, you see David Benavidez, that's why I got so much respect for him, because he called out Charlo. Benavidez Sr., his father, he told me on split decision that he thinks Charlo beats Canelo. He said Charlo is more dangerous, more difficult. He's awkward. He hit hard and technical at the same time. And guess what they did? They called out Charlo bluff. Every single one. Whatever Charlo had to say when it came to vaccination, when it came to too young, whatever it was, David Benavidez was willing to do whatever it takes, to fight Charlo. Obviously, Charlo wanted no parts of David Benavidez, and now David Benavidez, he called out Berlanga. Not just Berlanga, also a Cuban fighter named by David Morrell. He said that he's a great fighter, a dangerous fighter, and that's a fight he would look forward to in the future because obviously David Morrell is 4-0. And nobody is mentioning David Morrell. Nobody. Because David Morrell was 192 and 2 as an amateur. One of the hottest amateurs in Cuba. And David Morrell is entertaining the idea of fighting anybody. So when Canelo get presented this fight, who he just fought, Avni Yildirim, for David Benavidez belt, which that was strategic for the people that don't know. Canelo Alvarez had the audacity to say, yeah, what you told me and informed me on, I don't fight anymore. I don't fight Mexicans because that's my people. Now, you Mexican, right?
Yes, sir.
So it's mind-blowing to me. Ain't Chavez Jr. a Mexican?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is Lopez a Mexican that he fought at 154? Josecito Lopez?
Excuse me?
Wasn't Josecito Lopez Mexican that Canelo fought at 154? He was, right?
So, yeah.
So, again,
so
Canelo doesn't mind fighting the Chavez Jr. of the world, who's the same size as David Benavidez. He don't mind fighting the Josecito Lopez, who moved up from 140 pounds to fight Canelo at 154. He don't mind fighting those guys, but he minds fighting he minds fighting David Benavidez. He's Mexican. When Mexico is known for the Mexican wars between each other, the heritage of the Mexican wars between all the legendary fighters from Barrera Morales, and the list goes on and on and on. But Canelo want to put a stop to that tradition. As soon as he have an undefeated Mexican, a dancing partner he could dance with. Just to let you know, that's why half of Mexico is against Canelo. Mexico criticized Canelo more than America does. America fully support Canelo, right or wrong. Mexico, you best believe Mexico criticized Canelo for all this duckish moves he makes. Canelo is internationally known, is nationally known in Mexico for being for having the duck print in the sport of boxing.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And I do not get represented by Canelo. I am not Canelo. Like, you know, I am not represented by him. I am represented by David Benavidez, the real boogeyman at 168 pounds. That man is a dog, and he'll fight anybody. I can tell you that. And I would just take my money right now if Canelo versus Benavidez happens, or if Canelo versus Charlo happens. You know.
Yes, sir.
You know.
David Benavidez. Yeah, Benavidez said, "I take that fight on a 24-hour notice." For the people that don't know, Benavidez said, "I will fight Canelo in 24-hour notice if Billy Joe Saunders pull out." So just to let people know, you know, that's the type of caliber fighter we talking about. A real warrior that's willing to fight the best, you know, and go out on his shield, win or lose. He's willing to fight the best. And I mean, them type of fighters are rare in the sport of boxing. Yep.
Yeah, and undefeated black fighters. Like, you don't see that. You don't see that with Canelo at all. He's been ducking Andrade and Saul for 6-7 years, which is crazy. And especially considering that they started at 154.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's why Canelo is the European assassin, my brother. Hey, but I got a lot of callers on the line. Yes, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, man. Benavidez is the real Mexican dog. He's a real boogeyman, 168 pounds. I rest my case. It was good talking to you, AKHi. I hope to, talk to you soon. Yeah, I was really nervous right now, but yeah.
I appreciate it, man. Hey, man, make sure you call back after the fight or on another show if you're not up after the Canelo versus Saunders, all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Take
sir.
care, man.
Appreciate it, my brother. Thank you for calling in. That's my AKHi from Mexico, letting you guys know that he rocking with the truth. David Benavidez, he's not entertaining, no ducking or cherry picking. How you doing, AKHi? Who this is and where you calling from?
This is B from Las Vegas.
Yes, sir. Talk to me. So who you picking this Saturday night? Canelo, Saunders. And if you are picking a particular fighter, who you got winning and how?
Bro, let's be real, bro. Canelo walks through Billy Joe Saunders. Let's be real. Billy Joe Saunders ain't have a good fight since what? David Lemieux? That was like what? Like 2017?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Like, long time. Like what can Billy Joe Saunders do better than Canelo? Nothing. Head movement, Canelo. Hand speed, Canelo. Power, Canelo. Ring IQ, Canelo. I don't see Billy Joe Saunders even lasting, in my opinion.
So you see an early knockout from what I'm hearing.
I'm saying it won't go past the fifth round.
Okay. Now, and who this is again, just so we know, after the fight, if you do call back.
B from Las Vegas.
B, okay. All right. Well, so you got a early knockout in the fifth round by Canelo. I mean, I could see that. I'm not gonna front. I saw Billy Joe Saunders when he won the title at 168. He got hurt really bad by a right hand, and he looked really sloppy in the inside because when he throws his combinations, he leaves himself so vulnerable for a counter because he don't move his head, and he will be a sitting duck for Canelo. Yeah. Canelo counter right hands. Also, another fight where he fought on a YouTube undercard, Billy Joe Saunders looked very vulnerable to the body, to the head, and especially to them right hands, to the body and to the head. So that's Canelo P's and Q's. So I really see Canelo eating him up. I just think maybe stylistically, Benavidez will present some type of puzzle. This fight most likely will go 12 rounds in my books because, like I said, I think at the end of the day, Billy Joe Saunders knows how to survive, if anything. So he will be dirty if he have to. I seen him hit low if he needs to buy some time. I seen him tie up when he needs to. So I could see him surviving this fight for sure. But I don't think it will. I think he will present some type of puzzle early on for Canelo to solve. And until Canelo figure out his timing and speed, I see Billy Joe Saunders' awkwardness and his style presenting some type of a puzzle that Canelo have to put together before just getting comfortable in there. But you obviously disagree. You see just a quick knockout, huh?
Yeah, and I think it's funny, like he was calling him a juice head. You know what I mean with like the Spider-Man meme when they're like pointing at each other. That's what I thought of when he called him juice head.
Yeah, man. He didn't call them all type of stuff, but I mean, Billy is not the one to be talking, but he got the balls to do it. Not too many people are really gonna go at Canelo neck. I think it worked. I think the mind games were working for him, but I just think the moment he let off the gas. Why would you let off the gas when you're already there? You already accused this man of everything. So when you during the press conference, I'm expecting like a very intense and entertaining press conference, a lot of trash talk, and Billy Joe he played it respectful. So I don't know, maybe Canelo present is really getting to Billy Joe. So we'll see, because when a fighter say, like I heard Billy Joe say Canelo's this, Canelo's that, and he puts him on a high caliber, mentally, I just think he's showing signs of defeat. The way he's complaining about the ring, so on and so forth. And Canelo knows, the fact that, like I said before, you will never hear Benavidez complain about the size of the ring. You will never hear Charlo complain about the size of the ring. So the fact that Billy Joe Saunders threatened to go back to Europe if he can't get the size of the ring he wants, or at least 22 by 22. it lets you know how limited he is and what his game plan is. His game plan is if he don't belong in the ring with Canelo, most likely he's going to go to surviving mode. So we eventually going to see.
Mm-hmm. Nah, like Billy Joe Saunders, he's coming in with like built-in excuses. First the ring, then he's saying like, oh, I'm not even training like that. He's just like, he wants the excuses before the fight. So he doesn't want excuses after the fight.
Exactly. Yep. So that's, yeah. And you know, when you already, like I said, boxing is 90% mental, 10% physical. Mentally, if you're already thinking about defeat, guess what? You probably lose. You know, and not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying if you coming into a fight, you're already giving it a thought that you might lose, you most likely lose. Floyd, like he said, Floyd said, man, I never thought about losing. Losing never comes to my mind. Shakur Stevenson said, bro, he said, I don't even know what losing is. He said he don't even know the definition of losing. He don't even think about losing. When you have losing in your mind, guess what? You already lost. You halfway. You're already halfway to the L.
Mm-hmm.
You're already receiving a small L. And then you are, you know, fight night, you're on your way to a capital L. Like I said, you know, if you're already making up excuses in your head, that's not a good look, you know. So that I do agree with you when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, that's about it.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and pick up some more calls. Hey, but listen, I do want you to call back if you can after the fight, because like I said, for the people that place their prediction, especially a knockout, if you get it right or wrong, I just want to hear back from you and what's your thoughts after the fight. All right.
No, I promise you, it's a stoppage.
Oh.
I don't know. He might quit on the. He might quit. I don't know.
Oh man, that's a big statement. Okay, well you got me hyped, man. Hopefully it's gonna be a very entertaining fight. So yes, sir. We on the lookout. Just call back. All right.
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My man said it's gonna be a guaranteed knockout. And I just want to let Joey know. Just call me back on Saturday because I really have a lot of callers. So I don't think I'm gonna be able to get back with you. All right. Just want to, you know, Joey, if you do hear me, you know, stay on the line if you do have time. But like I said, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get back to you. How you doing, AKHi? Who this is and where are you calling from?
Swallow a dick, bitch.
That's so you
dick, you bitch. That's like Tyson Baby is one bitch. Tyson Baby one bitch. Don't complain now, bitch.
So you think you being a man?
So I know a big giant.
Get Canelo nuts out your mouth so you could talk right. Because we can't even hear you right. You're choking on Canelo nuts. That's what you're doing. You're choking on Canelo nuts. You don't even got cojones to talk like a man. You talking like the B word because you don't even got cojones to talk like a man one-on-one. I know the truth is hurting your soul. And I love it. I love the fact that the truth is burning your soul. You can't disagree with it. All you could do is talk shit while you have Canelo cojones all over your mouth. You're choking on Canelo nuts, talking shit. Excuse all the these trolls that's calling in, but again, we got some emotional trolls that can't accept the truth. How you doing, AKHi? Who this is and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Brad from Milwaukee. What's up, AKHi? How's it going, man?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing, brother? Who you got winning this Saturday night? Canelo versus Saunders. What's your take on that?
I definitely got Canelo, Saunders. I mean, I see what you're saying about like he does present some challenges, but I feel like Canelo has faced much tougher opponents, and he obviously faces Saunders for a reason. Look at who the last few people he's taken. So he's not going to take a fight that he can't win. And I also feel like I agree with, like, not necessarily an early stoppage, but I can see Saunders trying to find a way out of the fight, maybe quitting in the corner. I think, like, I could see, like, late rounds, like maybe 8th, 9th round, something like that. Maybe saying he got an injury, maybe just being tired, who knows, whatever. But that's my prediction so far.
Yeah, so you thinking Canelo gonna retire him?
Yeah, I can see it, but I mean, I don't know how you don't see it. He he got all these excuses already. He complained about all this stuff. It just seems kind of built in, or he might. I just feel like he's looking for a way out.
Yeah, I mean, I see it. Don't get me wrong, but I just think Canelo is just. We don't know what he's capable of at 168 because, like I said, we really haven't seen him as against top-notch competition. I mean, I see Canelo winning. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, obviously, Canelo got the judges' scorecards in his pocket. I bet you this. Canelo already got a scorecard in his pocket right now. Canelo Alvarez already got a scorecard, got him winning if this fight goes 12 rounds. So obviously, Billy Joe Saunders can't win on the on the scorecard because we've seen judges in the past from the Floyd Trap fight, Lara fight. They had Canelo Alvarez winning every single round, and these judges, I don't know if they had their scorecards written before the fight or what, but again, Canelo got the judges' scorecards in his pocket as we speak. So obviously, Billy Joe Saunders is not going to be able to win by decision. And by knockout, Canelo, I got to give it to him. He does have an iron chin. So seeing the fight, like I said, again, even though I'm saying I just think Billy Joe Saunders is going to present some type of a puzzle early on that's going to trouble Canelo a little bit. But eventually I see Canelo putting the puzzle together because I see Billy Joe Saunders' jab giving Canelo a hard time. I see Billy Joe Saunders' movement. And if he moves to his right like he's supposed to, avoid moving to his left, avoid the right hand and the right hand to the body, he will do tremendously well. But again, I just think Billy Joe Saunders is very vulnerable to counter right hands and especially to body shots. And his inside game is, I won't say non-existent, but it's semi-hold punch, grab punch, and he's vulnerable for uppercuts and body shots. You know what I'm saying? So he's been hurt in the past. So I see Canelo. I see what you're saying, but I think it's just going to be a unanimous decision for Canelo. It might be a close fight. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying I just see Canelo winning this fight. Like you said, it seemed like Billy Joe mind games are now playing on him because he went from saying from talking trash to not being respectful. Maybe the weigh-in tomorrow will play out differently. Maybe the weigh-in will play out differently, and he gonna be try to say like when he's face to face with Canelo in the weigh-in, he might push him. I don't know, but whatever he need to do something because. He already insulted the man. He knows Canelo's gonna come for his head. So might well continue disrespecting him. Why pause? Why go from you love that Mexican beef to Canelo? He's he a great fighter. Like why do that? You know what I'm saying? I don't understand what kind of mind game he's playing. It sounds like he's playing mind games on himself by doing that.
Absolutely.
And hey, let me tell you this. I want to bring this to your attention. What's your take on Tyson Fury? He admitted, he said, I never had mental issues. Mind you, Tyson Fury, there was multiple documentaries done on him by ESPN when he came back after he had a draw with Deontay Wilder and survived in a miracle way, getting up after he was really knocked out and he couldn't beat the count, but the referee gave him an extra count. He got up. Now, when he went to ESPN and did his $80 million deal for like a five fight deal, if I'm not mistaken, the first fight against Tom Schwartz, it was obviously almost like a circuit, a cherry pick. But again, he avoided a Deontay Wilder rematch for that fight, and they did multiple documentaries on Tyson Fury health, how he overcame depression, how he had health issues, how he was out of the ring for 2 years due to health issues. Not forgetting to mention the fact that the way Tyson Fury got to depression was failing a drug test for steroids, and in which he got suspended for 2 years. So they didn't mention the fact that he got suspended for 2 years for taking steroids against Klitschko, and they just brought up the fact that he went to depression. He went to depression and he overcame mental health. What's your take on Tyson Fury stating, and I quote, "I never had mental issues"?
It's just interesting. We all know what's up though when it comes to old media and like what was viewed as excuses for black fighters or, pretty much non-white fighters, we don't get that kind of, we don't get the opportunity to, say those kind of things. It's always an excuse. But, for guys like himself, white fighters, guys from the UK, they get all kinds of excuses. They can, whatever, and they'll cover it, and they'll, old media will like back that story, and they'll support that no matter what, without like finding out anything else or really trying to cover, the truth or what's really going on. It's a cover up at the end of the day for what's really going on. And also if you want to take it even deeper, I mean, you can look into it, and depression is a side effect of coming off of steroids. So that could even, you could even look at it like that.
Yeah.
But
and Tyson Fury has
kind of funny that he's.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't cut you off.
I think it's kind of that he coming out. No, he good. No, but no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think it's just funny that he coming out saying that now. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Tyson Fury, obviously, for the people that don't know, he's a fighter on the Hope list. So he obviously got the complexion for the connection to get the ultimate protection. Tyson Fury, Hope Insurance is better than Geico. If you think you have full cover insurance for your house or for your car or for whatever, you really don't. Tyson Fury, that man got full cover insurance when it comes to everything. They erased his track record. Like I said before, if you're on the Hope list, they erase losses on your record like they did with Lomachenko. They erase your history like they did with Tyson Fury, cheating, taking steroids, and they acted like it never took place. And they switched the story from him getting suspended due to cheating by taking steroids to depression, and sold the story of him overcoming mental health, made up a story. Remember, Tyson Fury didn't say, I don't have mental health issues now. He said, I never had mental health issues. He said, I'm solid as a rock. He told the truth, bragging, talking to Eddie. Again, Tyson Fury got suspended for 2 years for taking steroids. At the time, for Tyson Fury to beat the case, he paid a farmer, a 70-year-old farmer, he paid him $25,000 or 25 pounds to lie in court and provide him of documents that he supplied him a wild boar that's contaminated. A wild boar that's extinguished. Think about it. I mean, it's a wild boar that don't even exist. But some way, somehow, they're going to cut it up for Tyson Fury and give him a wild boar that's contaminated. So he sold that story to the judge. This is on documents, and Tyson Fury beat the case. So fast forward 5 years later, I think 5 years later, if I'm not mistaken, or a few years later, the farmer, his name is Martin Carefoot, he came out and told the truth, exposing Tyson Fury by revealing to the public that Tyson Fury actually bribed him to lie in court, and he didn't even pay him the 25 pounds he owed him. This old man said, listen, at the end of the day, I just want to tell the truth. I don't want to die with guilt. So the truth is out there. The moment Martin Carefoot said that, he got investigated, and UCOD over there in the UK, they reopened the case, and Tyson Fury was facing an 8-year suspension from the sport of boxing for bribing a man to lie in court. Now, this is a bigger case than just taking steroids. If you just take steroids, you get suspended for 6 months, like Billy Joe Saunders did. So it's not a big deal. The big deal is Tyson Fury bribing a man to lie in court. So that obviously took place for Tyson Fury to escape that situation. He relinquished his license in the UK, and that's why he can no longer fight in the UK. So he's beyond the UCOD reach. They can't do nothing to him since his license is gone. Now, but he still could fight in the United States. The sport is corrupted like that. Now, the UCOD are really upset at Tyson Fury, the way he was able to maneuver from justice. So they still doing investigations with Martin Carefoot. However, out of nowhere, Martin Carefoot was threatened. And I reported on this. I reported on everything I'm mentioning, and everything I'm saying is a fact. It's factual information. Martin Carefoot was threatened by a group of people. And we know Tyson Fury associated himself with mob ties, with Daniel Canahan. And we know the story behind that if you guys didn't see the documentary. So Martin Carefoot was threatened at night. There's people was doing drive-by by his house screaming, we're going to do something to you if you don't do so-and-so, if you don't drop the case. He received phone calls threatening him when he started exposing Tyson Fury. So he told the UCOD and the police that he's no longer going to cooperate. He refuses to cooperate because why? His life is obviously threatened. Now, funny enough, ironically, old media, I mean, Tyson Fury Hope Insurance kicked in yet again, and old media, you know, they didn't even report the fact that Martin Carefoot said that his life was on the line. He was threatened. That's why he dropped the cases. They just said Tyson Fury proven innocent. Proven innocent? This man threatened a 70-year-old farmer. I mean, where's the integrity for old media? It's mind-blowing. And now the truth came out of Tyson Fury's own mouth, revealing to the public that, yeah, 2 years, you know, when I got suspended for 2 years and I blamed it on mental health and depression, that was just a lie. I never had mental health. I never had mental issues. So again, you see, like I always say, I always say this, 3 things that will always come out is the sun, the moon, and the truth. They will always come out. The truth will always prevail. Old media could report 1 million lies, and the truth will always prevail.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Your knowledge runs so deep, man. You just fill me in on a lot right there. That is just crazy. Like, I knew about some of that stuff, but man, just to see how deep that runs, that's just crazy, man, when it comes to your sport. But yeah, I see what you're talking about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's what it is. New media, we report the whole absolute truth and we put it together like puzzle every single time. And just to let the public know, this is the problem in the sport of boxing. Is like the Wild Wild West. We ain't even talking about the glove gate. This is the Wild Boar Gate deserve its own documentary. The glove gate deserve its own documentary. The murderous row deserve its own documentary in the sport of boxing. It's absolutely, you know, it's like, it's no rules in the sport of boxing. There's so many loopholes that you could get around. That's why you see Tyson Fury informing Billy Joe, hey, Canelo's on the meat. Canelo's on this. Canelo, he's eating the meat and he's able to pass because Tyson Fury noticed because he's on it. He knows what's going on. And remember, Tyson Fury got accused and he said he knows 100%. This former fighter said that he knows. Perez said Tyson Fury's on steroids to this day. He knows fighters. He knows bodybuilders that are on steroids, which they told him that Tyson Fury is on it. And these bodybuilders are Tyson Fury friends. They friends with Tyson Fury. So it just lets you know there's a lot of corruptions, a lot of loopholes in the system. That's why you see Billy Joe Saunders accused Canelo of manipulating his gloves and his team. Because why? Tyson Fury is putting him on game. Like, hey, don't let Canelo do you how I did Deontay Wilder. That's what he's telling him pretty much. You know what I'm saying? So only a cheater knows how to get away with cheating. So Fury could inform Billy Joe on all the cheating tactics and the cheating codes in the sport of boxing. So he will be well aware of everything that's taking place in his surroundings. You know, so anything else you want to say, my brother, before I pick up the next call?
You know, pretty much just you know, actually looking forward to the fight. Funny enough, you know, one thing I do appreciate about Canelo. I don't like his choice of opponents, but at least he is. You know, we get to see him 3 times a year or something now, which is a lot compared to, you know, a lot of other superstars and stuff that I like. But it's, you know, it's disappointing, but it's like, all right, at least we get to see him. You know, we try to balance it out, but you know, at the end of the day, it's still kind of, you know, unacceptable and unfortunate. But no, just looking forward to the fight. Appreciate you taking my call. Love the channel, love the show. Definitely gonna be tuning in. So
yes, sir,
thank you,
man. All right, man. My pleasure talking with you. Make sure if you can call in after the fight because you did place a prediction. So I really want to hear from you after the fight. All right.
For sure, will do.
Yes, sir. Thank you for calling in. I'm on to the next one. How you doing, AKHi? Who this is and where you calling from?
What's going on, man? This is Brian from LA.
Talk to me. Who you got? Canelo, Billy Joe, and how?
I'm gonna go Canelo. I'm gonna go Canelo decision. Billy Joe's a runner, so I can't see him being knocked out in this fight. it'll be 116, 112 at the end of the day, Canelo.
Okay, so you see it as a competitive fight somewhat.
Somewhat. I mean, Canelo's not. He's short for that division. Billy Joe. He's pretty elusive. He's long. He's very underrated, to be honest with you. He has a high IQ, great boxing ability. So it'll be a different look. Hopefully the lights and the crowd won't be too big of an event for him, because that's what I felt slow down Smith in that last fight. Because honestly, the way Canelo dominated him, I did not see that coming. I thought that was going to be a competitive fight, and Canelo showed me I was wrong. But people were trying to give Smith some excuses, talking about he only had 6 weeks to train. But I mean, honestly, when you're a champion, 6 weeks is enough. So I can't even validate that excuse. But again, hopefully Billy Joe won't be shocked by the 70,000 people in the crowd, and he'll perform.
Yeah, I mean that feels different for sure. When you have 70,000 in the crowd, I mean, you could feel the electricity that's in the air. So, I mean, that's a great experience as well for the fans and for the fighters. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. Now, what's your take on Oscar De La Hoya? Oscar De La Hoya responded to Canelo Alvarez, and he said, listen, Canelo talks bad about me and says that I'm a bad promoter. All I do is drink. But he made more money with me, with the DAZN, than when he is without DAZN and without me. When he, as a free agent, he made more money with me than without me. So, what's your take on Oscar De La Hoya comments claiming that when Canelo was with DAZN and when he gave him that contract with DAZN, he was making $33 million plus guaranteed per fight? It don't matter if it was an Ivini or so on and so forth. Meanwhile, I mean, and then obviously afterwards, when Canelo had he lost his contract for cherry picking Ivini Yildirim. Now, as a free agent without Oscar De La Hoya, without DAZN, he's making less than $33 million per fight. What's your take on that?
I didn't hear that, but I mean, I wish Oscar would just stop talking. Every time he opens his mouth, it's like bad karma. I was just thinking about this yesterday. He took a shot at Hearn a couple years ago when he didn't have a fight for Canelo, and Hearn was struggling to make a fight for Joshua, and then he made a fight for Canelo immediately, but then it fell apart. And it's like, man, every time this guy opens his mouth, he puts his foot in it. And I really like Oscar, so it kind of bothers me when he does that to himself. But I don't think to answer your question, I don't think it really matters, because you can't compare apples to apples. We're still in a pandemic, so Canelo's gonna make some really good money on this fight, and so will DAZN. They'll get the publicity they're looking for. So I mean, we'll see what Canelo's making when the pandemic is done and everything is open wide to fight us again.
Well, I mean, when you got 70,000 fans, I mean, to me, the pandemic is over. I mean, at least for Canelo, if you have 70,000 fans in the stand, that's already more than that's Canelo highest, I think, crowd attendance to this day. So, yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic is over with. I think having 70,000 fans, in the crowd is a proof of that. Obviously, people are still going to wear masks, but I don't think that's going to affect the money that's coming in, the flow of the money that's coming in, because of the obvious reason. That's fans, that's arena, that's a gate, that's making him more money than ever. So I don't think that's a problem. I think it did shock me what Oscar De La Hoya did, say that he made more money with him than without him, that he made way more money with him than without him as a free agent. So he don't understand why Canelo hate him so much. If that's the case and Canelo is making less money now, I have to side with Oscar De La Hoya, because you go where the money at, right? I mean, Canelo talks about and how he always want to make money in the sport, and it's always about making the most money, maximizing the dollar. And Oscar was doing that for him and promoting the fight for him as well. So that being said, I just think at the end of the day, Oscar De La Hoya, one thing I always respect about Oscar De La Hoya is that he always fought the best. You know, win, lose, or draw. He wasn't cut from the same cloth as Ryan Garcia is today, or Canelo. You know, Ryan claiming anxiety, and Canelo want to pick on the weakest link, and all these Europeans. Oscar De La Hoya really fought the best. Like, for the people that don't know, Oscar De La Hoya fought Pernell Whitaker. He fought Floyd, Pacquiao, Chavez, you know, and the list goes on and on. I mean,
Bernard Hopkins,
Trinidad, you know, and Bernard Hopkins. I mean, it's crazy the type of names that Oscar De La Hoya fought. I mean, Fernando Vargas has a comeback fight after a loss, you know, to get his career back on track. So Oscar De La Hoya, he lives it. He talks at how he lives it. So when he says, I promote like I fight, I believe him, because he really, you know, when a fighter like him, he had the mindset, okay, I'm going to fight the best. And, I'm going to request a lot of money. But in order for me to make the most money, I'm going to fight the best. So that's how he moved. But you see fighters like Canelo today, you know, they got that duck print on deck, you know, which is avoid the best fighters and pick on the weakest link for the most amount of money. That's not how Oscar De La Hoya moved. And I think that's where Canelo and Oscar De La Hoya started pumping head, because Oscar wanted Canelo to fight the best. On the other hand, Canelo, he didn't want no part of Charlo or Andrade. Remember, Oscar De La Hoya, he came out to the public and he said, look, in order for Canelo to be a Mexican great, he has to fight Charlo and Andrade. This is what Oscar De La Hoya said when Canelo was still with Oscar De La Hoya, when Canelo gave up his belt to Charlo. So apparently Oscar De La Hoya didn't like how Canelo was moving, and Canelo didn't like the pressure Oscar De La Hoya was applying on him to fight these fighters that the public want him to fight. From even the legendary fighters, Chavez, Barrera, Morales, all these fighters were telling Canelo to fight these brothers, and Canelo elected to do otherwise. So I just think it has something to do with that. You know, the fact that Oscar felt like, man, I fought the best. I had to fight killers, and Canelo over here chilling, you know, and taking no risks, trying to claim he the best in the world. So I think that's where they started bumping heads, and which eventually it caused their breakup.
I don't think so. You know, Oscar, you got to remember, Oscar's a promoter, so you know he'll get to talking like one. He's the one that showed Canelo the way of ducking. You're saying, you know, he did say that Canelo should fight Charlo. Now, mind you, 5 years ago, when Charlos were running both Charlos were running the 54 division, when Canelo fought Liam Smith, Oscar came out on front and said, "Oh yeah, Canelo's fighting the best. He's fighting the top guy at 154." No, he's not. He's fighting the least threatening guy at 154. So don't try to sell me on some BS, Oscar. That's not cool.
Right.
And what you were saying earlier about, you know, Oscar, you would side with Oscar in regards to, you know, him making more money with Canelo making more money with him, and you know, you don't think the pandemic is affecting this? Yeah, he's going to probably have 70,000 people in the stands, but look, they're not going to get nowhere close near the live gate for a fight, and that record is with a 20,000 people crowd. So the pandemic is still affecting them in certain ways, and overseas, the way the zone works and Sky Sports, they're still going to sell it to the pay-per-view. It's not going to be like it is for us, where we can just, you know, subscribe to the zone and we can see it for $20 a month, or even less if you buy the annual pack. Yeah. So it's still affecting people a little bit, and it's affecting their money, their advertising money, all sorts of things, where it's just chipping away at their pockets. So right. I mean, they still gonna make away like bandits. They're gonna do all right.
Well, I just find it intriguing that Canelo didn't disagree. Just let me just say this real quick. Canelo didn't disagree with Oscar, because someone asked him the question and actually played the clip for him, what Oscar De La Hoya said, and Canelo, he didn't disagree with Oscar and say, yeah, but I'm making equal amount of money or almost the same. But he sounded like he making nowhere near what he was making with DAZN and Oscar De La Hoya prior to that. So prior to him becoming a free agent. And then also when you were talking about when he was cherry picking Smith for Andrade belt, Oscar came on and said he was fighting the best. Yeah, of course, Oscar, he gonna have to come out and say what his fighter want him to say to a certain extent, because he doing the same thing with Ryan. Remember how he said with Ryan, he said Ryan don't have to fight Devin Haney. Devin need to do this, Devin need to do that. He need to prove himself. When Devin is fighting his fighter Linares, and Ryan over here talking about anxiety and shit. Excuse my language. But the point I'm trying to make is that
no, you're good.
What the point I'm trying to make is that Oscar, he will defend his fighters at the end of the day, but I think he just got fed up of defending Canelo, because it got to a point where Charlo fight was a mega fight. It became a mega fight. Charlo fight was really demanded by the public, in which Oscar felt like, listen, I got to make money too. As a promoter, he wanted to bring in the biggest fight for DAZN. So he wanted a Charlo fight, but Canelo didn't. So at one point, like you were talking about with the Smith situation at 154, he probably didn't feel like the timing was right. He probably felt like, okay, well, let's wait for the timing to be right for the fight to be big enough. But then at 160, he felt like the timing is right because Canelo is in his prime, Charlo is in his prime, and the demand is at an all-time high. And also Charlo was his mandatory. So it's like you keep maneuvering, but you end up at the same stop sign. You drive fast, you taking cuts, you taking corners, and then you end up at the same stop sign. So Charlo and Canelo ended up at the same stop sign. So Oscar De La Hoya was like, man, that protection is over, man. Fight this man. And then Canelo refuses. So I think that's what ended up happening because, like I said, remember, Oscar De La Hoya, even though he fought the best, but remember, he didn't want to fight Floyd Mayweather right away. When Floyd Mayweather was pretty boy at 130, he was calling out Oscar De La Hoya. But Oscar De La Hoya fought him, 10 years later, when Floyd Mayweather called him out 10 years prior to that. The point I'm trying to make,
Floyd Mayweather didn't have the cachet at the time.
Yeah, Floyd was a pound-for-pound fighter. He was one of the best in the world. He was a hot name. But again, Oscar De La Hoya waited for the right time. But they don't call him a businessman, though. They don't call him cherry picker. He waited for the right time. And I give him credit. He fought a lot of great names. But again, he waited for the right time. I think that's what he was doing with Canelo. And Canelo he will never fight Andrade and Charlo. That's how I feel, because he's told Andrade, you boring and this and that, but he ironically fighting the same fighter who has a worse style, a fighter that move around more than Andrade does, Billy Joe, who tested positive against Andrade. So again, if Andrade is willing to raise his hand and take this fight on a 24-hour notice to replace Billy Joe, and Canelo will pretend as Andrade don't even exist. If Andrade can't land a Canelo fight in 24 hours, in 24-hour notice, while Canelo had a full camp, he will never be able to fight Canelo in my books.
Oh, man, come on now. You know, Billy Joe was just talking. He's full of it. He's not about to walk away from this fight. He already.
Yeah, but he flew Ryder out. That's the problem. He flew Ryder to the States. So I just felt like, why would you flow? If you're gonna need a backup plan, why not Andrade? That's like a champion, a current champion, and a similar style as Billy Joe. He's a southpaw. He's a champion, undefeated in 2 different weight divisions. So why not fight the matchroom fighter Andrade? I mean, it just makes a whole lot of sense, especially if he's willing to fight you. So again, I just think, Canelo, he knows what's going on, man. He knows what's his kryptonite, and at the end of the day, to each his own. But any last thoughts before I pick up another caller, my brother?
Oh yeah, a couple things. Most of the time, 99% of the time, I'm on your side when we talk about Canelo. But in the beginning of your stream, you guys are bashing him a little bit too much.
Yeah, what did I say? What did I say you disagree with?
Three things that he's doing right. I mean, like, honestly, the only thing that he's doing wrong is not fighting Andrade and David Benavidez. Those are really. I spoke to you maybe 2 months ago, after the Yildirim fight, and I told you, I honestly think he'll beat Charlo. I don't think Charlo would have much for him. And even Charlo's brother recently just said Canelo's pound for pound #1. And, you know, he don't even really like Canelo like that.
He just be
but Canelo,
that. He just
honestly, when you look at his resume, he has a deep resume. I don't give him, you know, again, me and you spoke a couple months ago, and I don't really give him credit for the Kovalev fight. But everything else, I mean, I don't think he beat Triple G in either of those fights. But, you know, at the end of the day, he jumped in the ring with him. And the second time around, it was close fight. The first time, I thought Triple G won 8-4. I don't care what nobody says.
Yeah,
but
he
did, and you know he fought Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs is a black fighter. He fought him, no problem, and he won with the grace of ease.
Well, let me say this. Let me say
this
because you bringing up a lot of different things, and I just want to mention the fact that, you know, when you say you think he could beat Charlo, that's cool, but you ain't Canelo. I just wish Canelo had your confidence, because I don't care if Canelo think he could beat him. I want him to fight Charlo. Man, you know how many times Mike Tyson told Canelo to fight Charlo? Every interview that Mike Tyson, as soon as Canelo get brought up, he says he fought that soft guy, Avini. Yeah, he need to fight the two Charlos. That's what Mike says. So if Mike won it,
but Mike let him off the hook when he came on Hot Boxing.
Again, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Because they feel intimidated. I keep telling you guys, they don't want the backlash. Why you think Jamel went on live and said that Canelo is the best pound for pound in the world? Because he want to cater in to these. You see, they flooded my comment section every time, in all my videos, on all my chats. They always flood my videos. Canelo the best. You a hater, but they don't disagree with anything I say. Because again, like I always tell you guys, the truth hurt. And Jamel knows. Let me say this. But let me say this. Jamel knows that Charlo avoided him at 154 and fought Kirkland instead. Jamel knows that Canelo avoided his own brother Charlo. Jamel knows Canelo didn't want to fight for undisputed against Andrade, but he still called him the best. Why? Because he just want to cater in to the fans so he don't get the hate. So he want to receive love instead. But they don't understand Canelo. He will be praised, right or wrong. These fighters on the coincidental list, you do or you don't, you won't get the credit. Floyd Mayweather is a perfect example. He had to overcome all odds, the judges, the referees, the double standards, you name it, and he still don't get his credit to this day. But hold on, let me stick to the Canelo topic real quick, because you said you could name a couple things. So name me. So you don't think him vacating the belt against Gennady Golovkin the first time, that wasn't a wrong move?
Yeah, but he redeemed himself.
Yeah, but do you think that was the right move to vacate his belt? To fight Amir Khan?
No, that was terrible.
Okay, that's a wrong move. Okay, do you think it was the right move to vacate his belt against Charlo?
He didn't vacate his belt against Charlo.
Yes, he did. What do you mean? Who got the WBC belt right now?
No, the WBC they helped him with that.
But he requested. He requested again.
Before that though, they let Charlo be the interim, and I say that with quotes with my fingers. They let him be the intern for a couple of fights, and then once they did the whole franchise diamond belt, whatever they did for him. So they helped him. You make it up.
It don't matter if they helped him. He requested it. Didn't Canelo request to fight Avini? All the WBC is deliver. The WBC, all they do is deliver. They are a witness organization, a witness protection organization in the sport of boxing. Ryan Garcia is the interim champion, right?
Yeah, that don't really mean nothing.
No, but I'm saying, hold on. Is Ryan Garcia the interim champion?
Yeah, he is.
Why he don't become the full champion? Why he don't become the full champion?
Well, he has to fight Devin Haney first.
Exactly. Charlo was the interim champion. How he became the regular champion? Because Canelo gave up his belt. So again, that's a wrong move. And you showing biasness and favoritism toward Canelo. That, trying to defend him right there, avoiding his mandatory, just let you know that you are showing favoritism toward Canelo. And then that's another wrong move.
Don't
wasn't it?
my words.
Wasn't it a wrong move when he was Andrade mandatory and he didn't fight the champion Andrade?
Wait, when are you talking about? I don't remember Andrade ever being his mandatory.
Andrade, no. Canelo was Andrade mandatory. Andrade was the champion. Canelo didn't want to fight the champion as a mandatory. Do you think that's the right move?
I honestly don't remember that.
Well, I'm telling you it's a fact. I mean, if you don't know about it, I'm informing you on it. So do you think that's a right move? Is it yes or no answer? Is it yes or no answer? Do you think it's a right move?
It's not a yes. It's not a yes or no. The reason is because if there is a bigger fight for him to make, he should do that.
He fought Smith.
So
he fought Smith for Andrade belt, but he didn't fight Andrade, and he didn't fight nobody that was a champion at the time. He fought somebody else that wasn't a champion when he could have fought Andrade when he was a champion. He waited till Andrade lost his belt, and he fought Smith right before he fought Smith. I'm not sure he. Let me just bring it up since you asked the question.
I'll look it up for you already. Okay, so
yeah, I could bring it up. Yeah,
I don't think he was. I don't think he was ever Andrade mandatory. Looking at it now,
he was though. That's a fact, and I know the factual information on that. He was Demetrius Andrade mandatory at 154 before he fought Smith. Just want to see real quick.
No, before he fought Smith, he was a 160 champ. That was when when they were accusing him of the whole Canelo weight thing because he was a WBC 160 champ, but he was fighting a catchweight.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was right before. It was remember when Andrade went on the Boxing Voice and called Canelo a bitch and this and that and the third. Remember when that happened? Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
That's when Canelo was his mandatory. That's when Canelo was his mandatory. Before Canelo even moved up to 160. So it was way before. It was, I think, after he won the fight with Lara. I think he beat Lara and in a controversy decision, and that's when Canelo was Demetrius Andrade mandatory. So again, it don't matter when it was. It was around the time when he wasn't a champion, and Charlo was a champion, Andrade was a champion, and he was Andrade mandatory. He didn't fight Andrade. You're not answering a simple question. Do you think it's right for him not to fight Andrade?
What's your question?
Do you think that was a right move? Do you think that was a right move to not fight Andrade as a mandatory?
No, because he had bigger fights.
No, he didn't fight.
There was bigger money.
His next fight, no. His next fight wasn't against a champion though. He fought another fighter at 154 that wasn't a champion.
Against a champion. Okay, so look, actually, I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm gonna answer it in another with another thing that I need to address with you. The other day, you were talking about
no. Let's not deflect. No. Let's not deflect because I don't have that much time. I don't have that much time. I don't have that much time. Yeah, but let me tell you this. I don't have that much time, and I still have few callers. And I just want to you avoiding the question. Canelo Alvarez was Andrade mandatory, and he did not fight Andrade. He fought someone else that was not a champion at the time. Do you think that's a right move?
For somebody else, no.
For Canelo as well, you can't hold Canelo to a higher regard because when Smith was when Canelo when Andrade vacated his belt, Canelo fought Smith for that same belt the next day. Nobody heard of Smith, but because of Smith is a European fighter.
No, bro.
This is why Canelo is the European assassin. And again, like I said, there's so many different things. I could talk about. He went up to fight Kovalev. He claimed he sent Beterbiev an offer, and Beterbiev team came out and said he never sent us an offer. And Canelo team blatantly lied about sending Beterbiev an offer. And again, it's so many different things. He's moving wrong. And you wonder why Jake Paul and Logan Paul taking over the sport of boxing. You wonder why Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul is having a bigger buzz because the best is not fighting the best in the sport of boxing. Canelo is avoiding Andrade. Canelo is avoiding Charlo and Benavidez. The best fights that the fans want to see. And y'all claim Canelo is the face of boxing. Well, he's not delivering the best fights. He's picking on these European fighters. This is why Canelo is the European assassin. So you can't even come up with good things to praise Canelo. All you're doing is making up excuses to why
you don't have time.
All you making up is excuses to why he's ducking. You can't even make up an excuse. That's the sad part. I know you got your book, the book of excuses open, and you can't even find an excuse for Canelo because again, he's destroying the sport. You know what I'm saying?
Now.
Again, you are
bugging right now. I am not a Canelo fan.
You couldn't disagree.
I'm not a Canelo fan. First of all,
really? You sound like you a brother of his. You sound like you a brother of his defending him.
You were picking on him for aren't valid.
Everything I said was a fact, and everything you said is an opinion.
No,
and everything I said is supported by facts, but you're still being in denial. I'm bringing up all these facts, and you're still being in denial, and you're bringing up nothing but excuses, and you claiming you're not a Canelo fan. So why are you making excuses? You're making excuses for nothing.
Because your timeline is wrong.
What timeline? What timeline? What timeline?
Your timeline is wrong.
What timeline? What timeline?
Okay,
no, give me the timeline. Hold on. You said my timeline is wrong. Give me the timeline that I said that was wrong. Give me the timeline.
When you're talking whatever year Demetrius Andrade was the 160-pound champion.
No, he was at 154. He was at 154. No.
My bad.
When they both see, you don't know your timeline. Yo, hold on, pause. Let me just inform you real quick.
Are you serious right now?
But I'm saying you saying my timeline is right, and you saying my timeline is wrong, and you're not even informed if Canelo was Andrade mandatory or not. How is my timeline is wrong when you don't even know your facts? You got to do your homework before debating. Because again, first of all, Canelo avoided Andrade on two different occasions. When Canelo was not a champion and Andrade was a champion at 154, Canelo turned down an opportunity against Andrade for the 154 belt when Andrade was a champion as a mandatory. And when Andrade was at 160, the WBO champion at 160. On the other hand, Canelo was a champion too. He was one fight removed from undisputed. He was one fight removed from undisputed against Demetrius Andrade. And guess what he elected to do? He elected to give up his belts instead of accomplishing his dreams of becoming the first middleweight undisputed champion of the world. Why? Just to avoid Andrade. His excuse, he's boring. His excuse, he's boring. He don't excite me. He run. But when Canelo fought Triple G, he was running. When Canelo, he fighting someone supposedly that's boring, Billy Joe. So again, all his excuses that he made up to duck Andrade were just excuses. Instead of fighting another teammate, another fighter on the zone, Andrade, for the undisputed claim, just to prove that he's the cherry-picking king of the century. With that being said, can you point out real quick what's the timeline that's wrong? Because I do want to pick up one more caller before I let you go. So real quick, don't beat around the bush. Don't beat around the bush. That first of all, when Canelo was Andrade mandatory, I believe in 2015, not in 2016. So see, that's why I'm saying you got to do your homework.
Bro, what are you saying right now?
Canelo was Andrade mandatory. I think it was around 2015, not 2016.
It wasn't 2015 either. That was when he fought Cotto for the 160-pound championship. Now, I don't know where you stand in life, but all day, 100 out of 100 times, I'm going to fight Miguel Cotto over Andrade, Charlo, or anybody. That's fact.
That was before. I keep telling you.
Original question.
I keep telling you it was in 2015. No. That was when did he fight Miguel Cotto?
In 2015.
16, right?
15, 1-5.
2015. Okay.
He was never Andrade's mandatory.
When he beat Lara, which was in 2014. After he beat Lara in 2014, which was 2014 7/12. So it was on July of 2014. After he beat Lara, he became Demetrius Andrade mandatory for the WBO belt. After he beat Lara, he fought James Kirkland, where he could have fought Andrade, but he chose not to fight James Kirkland, who wasn't a champion. Who wasn't James Kirkland? He was coming off a year and a half layoff. It was a big money fight. He was coming off a year and a half layoff, and he was knocked out a fight prior to that by a guy with 6 knockouts.
Yeah,
that's a bigger fight.
But at the end of the day,
that's a bigger cherry pick. That's a bigger cherry pick. Andrade was also fighting for HBO. So again, any excuse you bring up to the table is debunked. So quit reading out of the excuse book of Canelo Alvarez and do your homework and learn how Canelo ducked Demetrius Andrade his whole career at 154, 160, and 168 soon to be. You best believe that, because he already making up excuses to why he don't want to fight Andrade. Always remember that even if you want to make excuses for Canelo ducking Andrade at 154, he fought for Andrade belt later against Smith. He also fought, he could have fought him at 160 for undisputed. He chose not to, but he want to fight all these Europeans to become undisputed at 168. So either excuse you bring up to the table is debunked by the truth and factual information. So do your homework, quit bringing up excuses and false, narratives. And let me put the last caller real quick, because how you doing, AKHi? Who this is, and where you calling from?
AKHi.
Yes, sir.
AKHi, it's Greg.
Greg, what's going on? I haven't talked to you for a long time, my brother. What's going on? Where you been at?
Yeah, I just moved to San Diego, so I've been busy. But what's the topic tonight?
Well, let me bring this to your attention. Surprisingly, Eddie Hearn acknowledged the arbitration and stated, if the fight does not happen, then it's not my fault. That's their fault. That's their problem. But my question, why guarantee the fans the fight is not going to happen? Why not mention if the fight is not going to happen, if it's going to happen or not? Why not come out and say, listen, I'm doing everything I can to make the fight come to fruition, but if the fight doesn't happen, it's not my fault, it's on their end, on Tyson Fury, because he's going through arbitration. Just like Tyson Fury promoter said, Frank Warren, where the arbitration may prevent the AJ fight from coming to fruition. I don't understand why Eddie Hearn just want to take the blame by continue to promise the fans the fight is going to be announced in a week or so. He's been telling the fans that for the past 6 months. What's your take on what Eddie Hearn had to say, acknowledging that if the fight doesn't happen, well, it ain't my fault. It's it's on their end, which he's trying to say, listen, at the end of the day, whatever happens in arbitration is not up to me. What's your thoughts on that?
I think, honestly, that fight was never going to happen, because I'm pretty sure that he's got to fight Wilder before he can fight anybody. So I think really they're just trying to build a fight that may never happen, because if Wilder gets his revenge, we already know AJ is going to duck him, and who knows what's going to happen to Fury. He might go back into depression or drugs or whatever the case is. So, I mean, Eddie Hearn is just being typical Eddie Hearn, the most unprofessional boxing promoter in the history, probably. Well, his father might have been worse, but I don't know. I don't take anything Eddie Hearn says seriously at all, just because he contradicts himself nonstop, and he honestly just sounds like a hypocrite every time he speaks. Yeah. And as far as this fight goes, it doesn't even make sense, because the Wilder trilogy needs to happen before that.
Yeah, I mean, it don't make sense to me that Eddie just want to ruin his reputation and credibility, because the fans are going to remember this. All these millions of fans that he promised the fight is going to happen, and he guaranteed that the fight is going to happen, without mentioning the fact that could be the roadblock for the fight to come to fruition, such as the arbitration. Where he could easily, like I said before, just say, hey, listen, I can't guarantee this. I could guarantee everything on my end, but I can't guarantee everything on their end. Why he didn't just come out and say that from day one? But just to try to push the narrative that Wilder doesn't have a case when Bob Arum already came out and said, you know, mind you, Bob already came out and said, I don't know why Eddie Hearn is talking. I don't know why Eddie is telling every little detail of negotiations to the public. He should keep that behind closed doors, because I bet the fight is not going to happen with AJ. This is what Bob Arum said. After the arbitration meeting, Bob Arum came out and said, I bet the AJ fight is not going to happen next. Most likely Wilder is next. So imagine, like, why would you want to go against Bob? Why would you want to go against Bob? If Bob is already telling you, I bet the fight is not going to happen, why would you want to go against Bob say so when he attended the arbitration meeting?
I mean, Bob is definitely not the best either at keeping his word, but at the same time, the one thing I'll give Bob, even though I'm not a huge fan of him myself, Bob is so old that he just straight shoots everything, you know?
Yeah, he is.
So like when Bob says something, yeah, he just says it. He doesn't even think about the controversy it creates. Like just like when he said that he was in the hole because of Tyson Fury. That's not what a promoter should be telling the public. But at the end of the day, Bob just says whatever. He's so old, he just says whatever is on his mind, you know? So, and him and Eddie Hearn have had a lot of disputes, you know, when the Crawford, who was it? Crawford fought, what's his name? Amir Khan. You know what I'm saying? They were going back and forth about different things. And I mean, Eddie's just trying to keep AJ relevant. And I think it has to do too with the Pulev fight, when AJ asked the crowd, like, who do you want me to fight next? And they all started screaming Fury. And Chris Mannix says to Eddie Hearn, well, that's your job. You got to make this happen. And I think Eddie Hearn's ego doesn't want to admit that the next fight for Fury is Wilder. And no matter what, he wants to just like plant this narrative that Fury and AJ are going to fight, because yes, it would be the UK's biggest fight if it were to happen. But at the end of the day, he doesn't understand the simple contract that Wilder and Fury have for the trilogy fight.
Right. And I always
he just, I don't know, for whatever reason, wants to just make himself look foolish again and keep painting this false narrative that this is going to be the next fight. And if it isn't his fault. Well, for one, you don't know what's going on with the whole Wilder situation. You don't promote Fury or Wilder. So how can you speak on their business and say that Fury is just going to, you know, roll, like just skip the Wilder fight without any compensation to Wilder and screw Wilder out of his trilogy match, which is on contract, which I believe would be illegal. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I would assume so. And all of a sudden, this AJ fight is just going to magically happen because it would make Eddie Hearn a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Eddie Hearn, just to inform the public that don't know, he has one more fight with Anthony Joshua. So Anthony Joshua next fight is his last fight on the Eddie Hearn contract with Matchroom. So he obviously,
that makes.
Yeah, so he's trying to obviously capitalize.
Doing it
he obviously trying to capitalize on, trying to secure the biggest fight possible for Tyson Fury. I'm pretty sure if it was Deontay Wilder that was available, he probably would have did whatever it takes to get the Wilder fight at this moment in time, because this is AJ's last fight under his contract. So as soon as he loses AJ, he's no longer going to make that money on a mega fight between Fury or Wilder in the future. Also, on another note, Tyson Fury came out and said, I'm not talking about the arbitration anymore because I figured in America, everything you say can be used against you in the court of law. And I just want to say, duh. I mean, I thought that's how it works everywhere, but apparently Tyson Fury didn't know. So he thought he was going to get, the benefit of the doubt with the judge. But the judges is not with no nonsense. They're not like the old media. They're not gonna show favoritism or biasness toward Tyson Fury. The judge is gonna, judge based upon the information provided and who's right or wrong. And apparently, the arbitration is leaning toward Wilder, and they favoring Wilder. And apparently, the arbitration is kicking Tyson Fury ass, because this man said, I will never fight Deontay Wilder again. And now he entertaining the idea of fighting Deontay Wilder for a third time. So there's obviously a shift there. And the fact that Tyson Fury and Bob Arum have been telling the media that the fight is going to happen with, Anthony Joshua, Wilder can't stop the fight from coming to fruition. This arbitration is not really that serious. And the fact that they kept telling the public that backfired on them most likely in the court of law, because I'm pretty sure if I'm Deontay Wilder, I will bring that up to the judge's attention. I will tell my lawyers, yo, y'all telling me I can't talk about this arbitration case. I can't do no interviews about it. But Tyson Fury and Bob Arum keep telling the public that the fight, Wilder can't do nothing. This arbitration case is not that serious. And he's already negotiating and signing a deal to fight Anthony Joshua, a 2-fight deal. So I'm pretty sure the judge.
Yeah,
probably,
well, that's what they say.
Yeah,
that's what they say one week, and then the next week they say something totally different.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like
right.
you can't even.
That's what I'm saying.
Then he goes on Kellerman and tells Kellerman, "I'm not even going to acknowledge Wilder."
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I think at the end of the day, I just think Deontay Wilder, the judges most likely told Tyson Fury, listen, the judges probably told Tyson Fury and Bob Arum that you guys be telling the public that this arbitration case is not that serious. So this is not your call. This is my call. So we told you guys don't speak about it, and you guys continue to speak about it. And I just think they got in trouble for doing so. This is why they refuse to speak about it now. And they hinting at the fact that they leaning toward Deontay Wilder instead of AJ. And it's funny that, like I said before, a month ago, news came out that AJ and Fury signed the contract. And now Eddie Hearn is still talking about the other contracts need to be signed. So what did they sign before? I thought they already agreed to the money. I thought they already agreed to everything, because when you say they signed the contract, when you say the contract will include every single detail in it. It will include the size of the ring, the gloves, the location, every specific little detail. It will include it in the contract, from the money, the pay-per-view split, so on and so forth. So what did they sign? Did they just sign a term sheet? Or I don't even think they signed a term sheet, because if they have to agree to the money,
I don't think they signed anything.
That's what I'm saying. So it was just all smoke and mirrors.
I don't think they can violate the Wilder contract legally. You know what I'm saying? He was promised a third fight. It's not Wilder's fight. Wilder's fault that that COVID happened and they had to postpone the rematch. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't think legally he can fight anybody. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know for sure, but I the way they keep running in circles, they say like this topic has been going on for months, and every week there's some new news update. It's like, oh, we got the Wilder trilogy. Then the next week, no, he's gonna fight Joshua for undisputed. No, Frank Warren says this. No, Bob Arum says this. No, Eddie Hearn says this. No, Wilder's in training and he's getting really ready for the trilogy match. It's just, I don't believe any of it. I think it's all just hype and just people trying to make themselves relevant in the heavyweight division.
Yes,
you know?
Sir. Yes, sir. You're most likely right.
It's
And
just there's too many different stories.
yes,
Like
sir.
I go on Boxing Scene every day and I see a new story about this. and then I've even seen some rumors that Wilder was given $30 million to step aside, which I heard was also nonsense. You know what I'm saying? It's just, I don't know, one thing after another. There's always just But what I consistently heard from Wilder's team was he can't legally fight anybody except for Tyson or Deontay Wilder just because of the rematch clause.
Exactly. That's what I heard too. So, yes, sir.
You know, so I just don't really understand where this AJ talk is coming from.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, if you said, and I didn't know that Eddie Hearn only had one fight with him left. And that kind of pretty much, I think that answers the question of why Eddie Hearn keeps trying to make this happen, is because he knows how much it's going to matter in the UK. So therefore, he wants to screw over Wilder just to make money like usual. You know,
yes,
Eddie
sir.
doesn't. Eddie's a selfish narcissist. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. You know?
Yeah, man. So, yeah, man. So at the end of the day, that's what it is. My camera just died on me, man. Pleasure talking with you again. Who you picking, Canelo or Saunders this Saturday night? I just want to get your thoughts on that before I let you go. Who you got your money on?
And I'm gonna be real honest. I'm not excited. I'm more excited after seeing the Logan Paul press conference for that fight. Even though Logan Paul's not even a real fighter, but regardless, I mean it's pretty obvious Canelo. But I think it's going to be like the Callum Smith fight, and he's going to win by decision.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. That's what happens when the best don't fight the best in boxing. You know, now YouTubers are taking over. You know, and that's the sad part and the sad truth about the sport of boxing.
Canelo just said on an interview that he prefers golf over boxing. He doesn't even watch boxing.
Wow.
He'd rather watch golf.
Wow.
So that just shows you how much he loves the sport.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know?
That's so crazy.
I don't know. I could care less about the fight, but I'm going to watch it because I do have some money on it.
Yeah, okay. That's what's up, man. Well, pleasure talking with you. If you're still up and you're free, call in after the fight, and we're going to talk about it, all right?
All right. Have a good night, sir.
Yeah, have a good night, Craig. With that being said, guys, that concludes the episode and all the predictions. I appreciate for everybody that called in, from Craig to Joey, and everybody that's tuning in. Subscribe below, click on the notification bell, and to be continued on the next episode of AKHi TV. Peace, and I'm on to the next one.